Krishna devotees, and welcome to Her Grace Urmila Devi Dasi. It's been a really long time since we have had the pleasure of interviewing a Vaishnavi. Urmila Devi Dasi, thank you so much for your time and agreeing to meet us. So before we kick off, I'd like to just read a little bit of Urmila Devi Dasi's biography, and it will just give us a little bit to know what's happening, what Urmila Devi has done in her illustrious devotional career. So Urmila Devi Dasi, aka Dr. Edith Best, has served ISKCON continuously since her initiation by Srila Prabhupada in 1973. She and her husband are in the Vanaprastha order since 1996. They have 3 married children, 13 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandsons. She has a PhD in education, was a primary and secondary teacher for 27 years, and has 19 years of experience with school management. Urmila is the chair of the Shastric Advisory Council to the GBC, was an associate editor of Back to Godhead for 30 years, and formerly a professor of sociology of religion at Bhaktivedanta College. She travels worldwide teaching Krishna consciousness. She is the author of Career Dharma, Krishna Meditations, Essence Seekers, Dr. Best, Learn to Read, an 83-book literacy program, and the great mantra for mystic meditation. So welcome, and welcome to the devotees online. Thank you so much for joining us. So Urmila Prabhu, I'd like to start off with asking you, what is the service of being this Shastric advisor counsel to the GBC? What does that service entail?
Well, you can do a search for ISKCON GBC, and you can go to resources, and you can go to the Shastric Advisory Council, and you can see the papers that we've written for the GBC. Okay. And you can also see there our protocol, so you can get a whole description there of how it works and what we do. Basically, the GBC body, or sometimes just the GBC Executive Committee, has some philosophical question that either they don't have time to research or they don't want to research. They'd rather someone else do it. It's usually something controversial or difficult or complicated in some way. And we have the right to say no. Sometimes we say no. And then we take that up and research it. That research may take anywhere from a month to, I think the longest we've spent is 3 years on a topic. Wow. And then at present we have 17 or 18 members, something like that. I haven't counted them recently. We recently lost a member, we gained some members, so I'm not sure the specific number. But about 18 scholars worldwide. Mm-hmm. We have, I think there's 6 of us with PhDs, and there's probably 5 sannyasis. There's vanaprasthas and brahmacharis and grihastas, etc., people with a wide range of experiences, say from all different countries. Mm. So then we research the material, we write a paper conjointly, wow. And then we present that to the GBC. Sometimes presenting it to the GBC means one presentation, sometimes it may mean 15 or 20 presentations over a period of years, mm-hmm. working with the GBC, and then once the GBC approve the publication of our paper, then it's published on the GBC website, and our papers are used to inform the devotees in ISKCON about difficult or controversial things, and also they are meant to inform GBC policy on, the GBC can do whatever they want with our paper, but the idea is that the papers are meant to be the basis for their resolutions and their policies.
I have to say that's such an impressive thing, especially women are not considered very Shastric. Well, that's the common. Well,
Well, there's only 2 women on the Shastrik Advisory Council, just myself and Narayani. But there's a devotee in Mayapur, in Anta Sarorava.
Yeah.
We'd love to have on the council.
Yeah.
She's been asked and she always refuses. But she's a great Sanskrit scholar. Right now, she and her husband are doing a translation of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu for the BBT.
Oh, okay.
And if you think of Narayani, also, of course, Narayani's produced those books on the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam. And she's most certainly a great Shastrik scholar.
Yes, I acknowledge that there are many women who are Shastrik, but it's not often that they are acknowledged. So it's
that
just...
That may be the case.
Yeah, so I was just... That was my point more, that it's not often, and it's really wonderful to hear and see, have a living example of a woman taking on such a role. So
thank you. I mean, my main role, I'm as the chair of the Shastrik Advisory Council, I'm really the servant of the other scholars. So, I chair the meetings and I bring the papers together. I'll take everybody's work and put it together into one paper and organize it, and then I ensure that all the scholars go through the paper. I mean, obviously, I generally write parts of the paper myself as well, but I'm primarily the coordinator. And yes, getting 18 scholars from a wide variety of opinions and points of view and so forth to all agree on a particular, I call it herding cats, it's...
Okay.
And then I'm the person who liaises between the council and the GBC. So I'm the one who presents to the GBC. I'm the one who goes back and forth and deals with GBC objections or questions and things like that. So that's my primary role as the chair.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that with us and telling us what that actually means. Talking about herding cats, so I am part of the Sri Sri Radharadhanath Temple Bhakti Theatre, which is a performing arts department in the temple.
Okay, great.
And I was reading your full biography, and one of the things was an actress, and it just piqued my interest because of my personal investment in that service. And I wanted to ask, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So when I was in high school, secondary school, so for 3 years, when I was ages 14, 15, 16, 17, I was a member of what was called the Forensics Club, which dealt with debate and public speaking, and also with some aspects of drama. We did things called dramatic interpretation, where we would take a play and without costumes, without a set, without props, without moving, we would take on many different roles. So you take a script, and then the one person, by changing their posture and their position and so forth, would take the roles of several different characters. And we called it a dramatic interpretation. So I competed in that as well as in debate and extemporaneous speaking. I did win awards for dramatic interpretation, but mostly I won awards for debate and extemporaneous speaking. I mean, I was the state champion in extemp, and I was the district champion. Another year I went up to the quarterfinals in the nationals competition. Wow. So my other friends who were award-winning in debate and extemp and dramatic interp and things like this, they generally became lawyers. Okay. And I wasn't interested in becoming a lawyer. I felt like if you're really skilled in debate, you can win on the basis of your skill in debate, regardless of the validity and veracity of your argument.
Wow.
And I really was dedicated to truth more than to skill in argumentation. So I wasn't attracted to the law. And at that time, I didn't consider teaching as a profession, mostly because from the time I was 3, I had been criticized by my teachers and my mother, particularly for being a teacher. So when I was 3 in what we call nursery school in America, like preschool, my teachers complained that I was trying to teach them how to teach rather than playing with the other kids. Of course, as an adult, one of the things I've done is teach teachers how to teach. But anyway, so they would say, your daughter is not just playing, she's trying to teach us how to teach. And my mother would frequently say to me, stop teaching, stop teaching. So I didn't consider using public speaking as a teacher because I felt that my tendency to teach was something that I had to eradicate from my personality, that it was a problem. So I didn't know what to do with my inclination and my talent. And so I thought of theater. I thought, well, I could use it in theater. When I went to university, when I was 17, I took a lot of courses in theater. So I took courses not only in acting, but I also took courses in lighting and set design and things of that nature. Then after a year, I joined the Hare Krishna movement. I moved into an ashram and gave up my education at that time. Went back to it years later. But anyway, I gave up my education at that time. So I did get involved in theater. I played Maya Devi at a Boston Rath Yatra.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember what year that was. It was probably 76. I played Maya Devi in the fish drama. The fish that goes out of water, and Maya Devi keeps saying, "Hey, would you like this? Would you like this? Would you like this?" My longest running work with theater in the Hare Krishna movement was in the Ramayana at the 55th Street Temple in New York. So I played Shurpanaka for a while.
Wow.
I also played the...
I'm sorry, I just got to intercept. Those are all the meaty roles.
Yeah,
they're the fun ones.
Sometimes I joke that I was typecast, as the...
Yes, okay.
But I played Shurpanaka. I also played in the movie done by ITV, I was Srijata with the veil.
Yeah?
But yeah.
I remember watching that as a little girl, hey?
I don't know if I was a really good Shurpanaka. I mean, Lokamangala, who was both Ravana and the director, he used to really get on my case that I wasn't demoniac enough. And he would say, you have to look at Ram like he's a big gulab jamun, And I would be backstage trying to psych myself up for the role, and I'd be saying the verses from the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. I'd be saying, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So I did that. I was in two of Bhakti Marg Swami's dramas in Mayapur. I can't remember the other one. I was definitely in two of them. And one of them I was Jad Bharat's stepmother. Somehow I keep being in these, we put in these evil roles. I think the most fun I had in acting, and I might do it again for Janmashtami in America, next Janmashtami, depending on how the dates of my travel work out, I was in a drama which you can find online. I think it's on my daughter's YouTube channel, Champaka Lata's YouTube channel, Meeting in a Doctor's Disguise. I think it's up there in 9 parts, and I'm Jatila. Again, I get to play the bad guy. So I'm Jatila, who doesn't want Radharani to cook in Mother Yasoda's kitchen, and ends up letting Krishna into my house, Krishna disguised as a female doctor. So it's a very intense and yet funny drama, and the humor is all at Jatila's expense. Like, Madhu Mangal, everyone laughs with him. Jatila, everyone laughs at her.
Yes.
So I'm I'm the butt of all the jokes in that one.
I would imagine that this is little known information about you.
Well, that's something I regularly do.
I'm sorry.
I really enjoy being in theater.
Oh, wow. We're having a show later this month. It would have been amazing if you were with us.
I see.
Yeah. So, Urmila Prabhu, of course, we did a little bit of preparation before coming here, and I did ask you what you enjoy talking about. And, I mean, you gave me so much. So I was trying to figure out, what do I really want to talk to you about here? And I think especially because many of our audience are women. So this idea about balance. So personally, it's always disturbed me because I don't feel there's a life and spiritual life balance, because to me, it has to be an integration. It can't be separated. And I was really thrilled to hear that you sort of you were describing it such. So I would really love for you to talk to us about that.
About having an integration between your work and your home and your spirituality?
Yes.
Well, that's been an interest of mine from before I joined the Hare Krishna movement.
Okay.
I was always looking to find God since the time I was 4. And by the time I was a teenager, at least, if not before that, my mood was I want to be spiritual all the time. I mean, I had developed my own, I didn't have any guidance or anything, and it wasn't a thing in those days, but I had my own meditation practice that I did, I mean, from when I was 8 at least. But I didn't know
I need to interject. Was it something that you created on your own?
Yeah. Well, I just did meditation. I mean, it's not like anyone taught me how to meditate or like I read about it or anything like that. I just did. Later on, much later, when I read about it, I could understand what I was doing. But what flummoxed me was, how do I be in a spiritual state all the time? I mean, for me, meditation was you're going into a state where you're not so aware of the outside world, and you have this internal peace and focus and so forth. And how are you going to integrate that? And I was brought up in a very religious home, so we had the concept of regular attendance at programs and services and prayer. And actually, the tradition I was brought in did have a very integrated view of life, but it wasn't something that I saw practically. Like, how do you do this? How do you be in a spiritual state when you're showering and when you're grocery shopping and when you're working, when you're doing life? So one of the main things that attracted me to the Krishna consciousness movement, one of the main reasons that I joined ISKCON, was that I felt the philosophy was propounding this. The philosophy was propounding a way that you could be conscious of the Lord, conscious of your spiritual state in a different kind of consciousness in all situations and in all circumstances. But then I found, as I worked in the movement, that such was not usually the way that devotees were teaching. That I found the main way that devotees were teaching and presenting the philosophy was fractured, was very dualistic. And I understand this because Krishna's first teaching is you're the soul, you're not the body. And Prabhupada would very much emphasize we are different from the body, we are spiritual, this is the material world, there's a spiritual world. And somehow that particular part of our philosophy became so dominant that the other part of our philosophy, that Vasudevam Sarvamiti, or everything is Vasudeva. Vasudeva is everything. Sarva Kalamidam Brahma. And just this morning I was reading in Krishna book where Vasudeva is speaking to Krishna and Balaram, and he's saying how you're everything. Everything is you, you're everything, this world is you. And somehow that part of our philosophy, which is just as important, and that Krishna is telling Arjuna, go and fight while thinking of me. Somehow that got overlooked. I mean, I could look at the history of ISKCON and say, again, why it got overlooked. I think because we became in the beginning a very ashram-based, single, disenfranchised youth, most of whom were not married, who didn't have jobs, who, if they did, they left those things and moved into an ashram. So kind of brought into, which wasn't Prabhupada's idea. Prabhupada's idea when he came to America was that he was going to be preaching to educated, well-situated people in jobs and careers.
Yes.
That was his idea. Like in the Los Angeles temple, which had been a church, he wanted them to keep the seats.
Yes.
But somehow that wasn't they weren't the people that he attracted. And even when Prabhupada would encourage people to keep their jobs, they generally didn't. So we kind of lost that thread of, think of me while you fight the war, Arjuna. You know, be absorbed in spirituality while you're feeding your children, while you're taking care of your home, while you're working, that your sadhana is meant to pervade your life. You know, I was just reading this purport where Prabhupada talked about how the body of a devotee becomes spiritualized like iron in the fire. So the fire is our sadhana, our japa, our kirtan, our reading the shastra. And we don't usually have iron rods because there's not so many blacksmiths around today, so we don't see that very often. But I think about pots, like on your stove. You put your pot on the fire, and your pot becomes as hot as the fire. So the pot is the ordinary things in our life. Our care of our body and mind, our care of our family if we have one, whatever we're doing to earn our livelihood, if we're doing that, you know, all these things that we're doing, that's like the pot sitting on top of the fire of our sadhana. And then, as Krishna says in 424, all of that merges into transcendence. That when you spiritualize your ordinary activities, then there becomes no difference between the chanting of your rounds and the feeding of your baby. It's all transcendentalized.
Wow.
I mean, we can think about balance, as I mentioned to you the other day, in terms of time management and energy management. Like, how do I take care of my body? How do I take care of my home, my family, my work, and my sadhana? How do I fit that into 24 hours in a way that is sane and stable and joyful and not stressed? But that's a time and energy management question. And I think those are questions for everybody. Those are equally important questions for someone who's living in an ashram without a family, without a job. How do I make sure that I have time and energy for all of these things? But the mentality is that everything we do should be equally spiritual, and everything we do should be equally dedicated to Krishna, and we should be seeing Krishna as much in our driving our car as in our chanting our japa.
That is mind-blowing. So how do we do that?
Well, my latest two books, both of which have co-authors, are really focusing on that. So I have the book Krishna Meditations, which I wrote with Kamlasita, who is a native South African. She's well known in the Cape Town area. I mean, now she's married to a German and lives in Germany, but she's from South Africa. Her mother still lives in the Cape Town area. Okay. And this is a focus on many of the verses from the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam and Nectar Devotion on how to find Krishna in the world, how to find Krishna in our ability. Right now it's raining, in the rain.
Like how Krishna talks about it in Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, and how it's talked about Krishna in the Bhagavatam. Like the trees are the hairs of his body and the rivers are his veins and so forth. How to see the universe as actually the body of God. That the universe is a living organism, the universe is not a machine. That everything is spiritual. Sarva Kalamidam Brahma, Vasudevam Sarvamiti, everything is spiritual. And then our other book, which I wrote with Dr. Ruchira Datta, whose initiative name is Urmila, Devi, Dasi. not my god sister Urmila, not Anuta's wife. So that is on how to spiritualize our career, our livelihood. How to find what is our livelihood, how to find what is our nature, what is our individual dharma, how to use that in a way that connects us to the Supreme, that connects us to Krishna. And how to have a whole society, the third part of the book, is what would society look like if everybody did this. And my experience is that, although Srila Prabhupada talks about this a lot, like a lot, what does an ideal society look like? I haven't found that such is a really prominent topic of conversation or thought in our society. That if the whole world were to be in Mahaprabhu's movement, what would that look like? What would be happening in the world? How would people be living?
Do you want to weigh in here and tell us?
Well, we have a book that I worked with the committee in North America a couple years ago. It was part of a North American Leadership Initiative called ISKCON 3.0. So our committee took the 7 purposes of ISKCON, and we wrote a booklet taking each purpose and envisioning what it would look like in the world if that purpose were achieved. So I'd be happy to share that booklet with anyone. Very briefly, if you could just imagine that spirituality was part of every university. There were classes in consciousness. All the topics were related with Krishna. All of the schools for children were like that. If we had medicine that, yes, developed regular pharmaceuticals, but also looked at things in terms of Ayurveda, in terms of natural remedies, that medicine was in sync with our natural biology, with the rhythms of, like, most doctors today have lives that are very unhealthy. You have doctors that are on schedules that are not respecting their natural biological rhythms. I was talking to one devotee who's a surgical nurse, and she has to basically go almost the whole day without using the toilet because she's always in the operating theater. She says she can only drink water before and after work. And I thought, okay, here you're in a healing profession, and your own profession prevents you from being healthy. So if we had the healing professions that, using all of modern advances in medicine, was also more respective of the natural rhythms and harmony of medicine in the world, that scientific research was aimed at finding God and promoting a spiritual perspective, not just an advanced scientific perspective, that the governments were run by people, and Prabhupada said, are God conscious. He was asked, does that mean they have to be members of the Hare Krishna movement? Prabhupada said, no, mathematics is mathematics. So if you had, just imagine that, if you had the governments of the world, the politicians, the lawmakers, the judges. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said we want all the judges wearing tilak, the lawyers, the social workers, the police officers, the firefighters. If all those people were seeing themselves as the arms of the Lord, to protect and care for others, to keep the peace in the society, to make sure that there were laws that were bringing everyone prosperity and everyone protection. And then imagine if the businesses were devotional.
Sure.
So if Monsanto was run by devotional people with the idea of preserving the world's seeds,
Sure.
and actually taking care of Mother Earth. And the businesses, if Amazon and all these big businesses, if the people running them actually had the mood of giving everyone prosperity and running their business in a sustainable, regenerative, ecological way with respect to the air and the water and the land and the people and the natural resources. And then all of the support services, all the media. So if the, television, movies, radio, theater, you're talking about arts and music, if all of that helped inspire people to love Krishna, if, you know, the people picking up the trash were having kirtan as they did so.
Do you think it's a pie in the sky type of dream?
I hope not. I hope not. That's what Srila Prabhupada encouraged us to work for. That was what he envisioned.
So I want to ask, how does, for example, an Uber driver be conscious and integrate their spirituality or spiritual practice into their work?
All right, so if you're an Uber driver, how is that a service to Krishna? How is Krishna pleased that you are driving people around? Well, people have to get from place to place to do their various duties. I mean, we read about how, we don't read anything about the roads. We do read about how the veins of the Lord are the rivers. So I don't know if that's also applicable to the streets. But if we said that that would be also somewhat applicable to the streets, that there's somehow pathways in the body of the Lord.
Yeah.
And what has to be moved around on the pathways in the Lord's body. So there's various nutrients and items that need to be moved. You know, oxygen needs to be moved from one place to another, and proteins and starches and sugars and waste products have to be moved around.
Yeah.
And so somebody has to do that. You know, in our physical body, there's all different kinds of cells in the blood that move all these different things around. And so there's got to be someone who does that. You know, you have some cells that are stationary and some move around. So the drivers, the taxi drivers, the bus drivers, the airline pilots, they're moving around in the universal body what needs to be moved around.
And that's something that we can practice even now, even without our utopia.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, each person can, not fully, but each person can practice a lot of these basic principles in their life, even with the society not in order. And everyone can become perfectly Krishna conscious, no matter what. And then just to set an example, I mean, Krishna talks about how someone is very dear to him in the end of the 12th chapter, and he says, one who's not envious, who's a kind friend to all living entities. Well, if you're an Uber driver, you're trying to be a kind friend to all living entities. Who's not affected by success or failure, heat and cold, happiness and distress. Well, that's a good way to practice that. Right?
Yes.
You've got rude passengers, you have polite passengers, you have good weather, you have bad weather. Sometimes people give you a good rating, sometimes they don't give you a good rating. And how to practice equanimity. Krishna, I'm offering this to you. Krishna, I'm offering this to you. Krishna, I'm offering this to you.
Okay.
And how can I act with the people that I'm driving as a representative of Krishna? How can people see Krishna in me as I'm driving them around, in my character, in my behavior, in my demeanor? How can they feel, wow, I had a spiritual experience in the car? Now, you don't have to be playing devotional music or give them prasadam or give them books, although I know Uber drivers who do that kind of thing. You know, they'll have some kind of spiritual music, and they might say to someone, you know, is it okay if I play this? And they might have some books available in the car. But even if you don't do that, just by your very presence, like Prabhupada told my father in 1974, my father said, I'm coming to the temple because I love my daughter and son-in-law, not to see Krishna. And Prabhupada said, yes. He said, they are loving Krishna. He said, chanting and dancing are symptoms of loving Krishna. So they are loving Krishna and you are loving them. So two things equal to the same thing are equal to each other. So if you're seeing my driving ability, my car, the sounds of the car, the wind, the light of the sun, the birds we're seeing, all of these are the body of God. And you're feeling love for Krishna as you're driving. And if the passengers in the vehicle get some kind of affection or appreciation for you, then they're also getting some appreciation for Krishna. You're loving Krishna, they're loving you. Two things equal to the same thing are equal to each other.
Well, thank you for that. Unfortunately, because we've had such a big space in our interviews, not many people have joined, so we're not getting questions from online. But we do have 3 lovely devotees here, and I just want to ask if anybody has any questions before I continue. No? Okay. So, Urmila Prabhu, talking about spiritualization of our lives on an individual level. When I look at your life, you have dedicated so much into children and education. Obviously, that's something extremely dear to your heart. And can you tell me, I mean, we did talk about it, and you did say that schooling and education is a lot of that responsibility should be taken on by the institution to provide it for families.
Well, Prabhupada says that.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
Yeah. There's a nice purport in relationship to Dhruva Maharaj, where Prabhupada says the leaders of the International Society should start schools for children all over the world. And Prabhupada said that in every center there should be a school for children.
Wow.
Not a Sunday school, a school.
Sure. Yeah, we, over here it's been very hard. I mean, there is a Sunday school, but it's not a well-attended Sunday school, although it's been around for years, and maybe a decade or 2 ago it was much better attended. But so without trying to say what we should do as an institution, what can a community do to help our children?
How is the institution different from the community?
Because, well, it might be an individual, like maybe me and one other person will say, okay, let's do this.
But aren't you part of the institution?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so tell us.
Prabhupada said, don't say they should do it. Prabhupada was talking to some leaders, and they were saying, the leaders were saying, oh, they didn't do. Prabhupada said, don't say they. That is bureaucracy. So if we consider ourselves members of ISKCON, then ISKCON is also ourselves. To think that ISKCON means the temple presidents and the GBC, and that therefore they should do everything and we're just little passive, that's not going to happen. But the community, the congregation, is just as much ISKCON as the people with titles and positions. So what could we do as an organization is to make good Sunday schools and to make good regular schools. And is that easy? No, but I don't know. What's easy? Very few things in life are easy. Even just keeping your house neat and clean takes some work. Yeah. It doesn't stay that way by itself. So there are so many successful full-on schools, and there's so many successful Sunday schools. Learn from them. There's curriculum out there, there's teacher training, there's books published, there's so many resource materials.
Yes.
Do it.
Wow, thank you for that.
There's a lot of guidance, there's a lot of networking, there's a lot of connection available. The Ministry of Education can network you with the proper people to get things started. Of course, if you're thinking about a full school, then you're thinking about legality, and you're thinking about money, and physical facility, and things like that. But as it's Prabhupada's desire, therefore Krishna must approve of it, and if Krishna approves of it, then if we work in that direction, we'll be facilitated.
Oh. Well, thank you for that. Let's try and do something, I would say. So we have just a few minutes left for our interview. I don't want to impose more than I should, but this also was something that you felt quite passionate. I don't like using the word passionately about it.
Right. It sounds like Rajagun. Right?
Yeah. So something that's close to you, let's say that. So you were talking about how to deal with emotions, thoughts, and desires. how to learn inner detachment, inner transformation, talking about inner transformation.
Yes, and I'd say this is very important. Like having an integrated, dynamic spiritual practice throughout your day and throughout everything, the teaching and the emphasis on how we deal with the mind, with thinking, feeling, and willing, is a theme that runs throughout our scriptures. It runs throughout the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. And this, I'm not so clear about why somehow or other in our ISKCON movement, it doesn't seem to be something that we talk about a lot in our classes, or emphasize a lot in our training of devotees. It's something that in the last quite a few years, I don't know, 10, 15 years, in the world in general, has become very dominant through people teaching varieties of Dhyan Yoga and Dhyan or meditative yoga. This concept of detachment. In the lessons I'm preparing right now on the 7th canto, it's interesting, Prabhupada uses the word observer, even though it wasn't in the verse. He adds it to the translation, how the soul is the observer of the different energies of the body, of the mind, excuse me, and of Krishna's energies in general in the world. And I thought again how this isn't something that we so much teach people how to do. Srila Rupa Goswami gives in his first 20 items of devotional service not being so much affected by joys and sorrows.
Yes.
But again, it's not an anga of bhakti that we so much teach people. I'm confused as to why not. Why don't we do that? Once you kind of discover that, part of our sadhana, part of our worship of the Lord, even for a beginner, because Krishna talks about this in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which Prabhupada identifies as an introductory book, a beginner's book. So the beginning part of the beginner's book, where Krishna talks about having this freedom from attachment and aversion,
Yes.
and having this equanimity toward desires that like rivers flow into the ocean, so in the same way we should see our desires. This is not something just that happens when you're realized. It's not that you don't pay attention to this and when you become a pure devotee, then boom, it's automatically there as a concomitant factor. But it should be part of one's sadhana, part of one's worship of the Lord, is cultivating this mentality of an observer toward the material thoughts, feelings, and desires. Seeing them as not me. Seeing them as Krishna's energy, offering them all respects, not being adverse to them, but not identifying with them or acting on them. Now, what people often think about in terms of thoughts, feelings, and desires is that we should repress them. That controlling our thoughts, feelings, and desires equals some sort of repression or some sort of hatred of them. But that's not the teachings of Shastra, Srila Prabhupada, and our acharyas at all. It's a neutral detachment where you neither say, oh, this feeling, this emotion, this desire is me, and it's justified, and I should act on it, and I should express it. Nor do you say, well, it's not me, and I hate it, and I want to kill it. Prabhupada says you cannot kill desires. If you try to kill desires, you will, first of all, be unsuccessful because they're part of Krishna's energy. They're eternal. And second of all, have desires is the symptom of being alive. Like this chair doesn't have any desires. If I hit the chair, it doesn't say, ow, why are you hitting me? I don't want to be hit. If you hit me, I will say, because I have desires. So it's rather seeing them as, oh, let me offer my respects to them and neither try to kill them nor indulge in them. I mean, Krishna does talk about this not only as a sadhana but also as part of sadhya, where he talks about in the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that those who do not hate illumination, attachment, or delusion when they appear, nor long for them when they disappear, remain, knowing that the modes are always active, always remaining, neutral, has transcended the modes of nature. But that's also a practice.
Some people would think neutral is being dead.
Well, that's perhaps, if they're voidists, they would think like that. So Krishna is not advocating just being neutral, but he's being neutral toward the material as part of enjoying the pleasure within. So have spiritual thoughts and spiritual feelings and spiritual desires that I do indulge in and that I do relish and increase. Krishna says in the 12th chapter, the whole purpose of sadhana bhakti is to develop desires to attain him. But desires and thoughts and feelings that are the result of the material energy, that are a result of sattva, rajas, and tamas, to those we are neutral. I mean, a very simple example that I would imagine pretty much every devotee does is you go into a food store and they have all kinds of food that you're not going to buy. They have cakes made with eggs that they're selling, I mean, so many things. And as you're walking through the food store, you don't go to the counter of cakes and smash them with a stick and, you're just neutral.
Yes.
You're just neutral. And you're there shopping for what you desire to use to cook for Krishna. You have a neutrality toward that. If some desire arises in the mind, which I found has only happened to me on the maybe 2 or 3 occasions where I went shopping on a fast day, which I really would not recommend. If you go grocery shopping on a fast day, then as you pass by the cakes, the desire may arise, oh, that looks good, because you're so hungry. But if some desire arises in the mind, you're neutral towards it. Like you just say, oh, that desire has arisen because I'm fasting. And you don't hate the desire, and nor do you indulge it. You don't buy the cakes and eat them. You don't say, oh my God, I've had this desire, I have to eat the cakes. Nor do you hate the desire. You're just neutral towards it. And you're cultivating the desire to buy things for Krishna.
Okay, Urmila Prabhu, but how do you get there?
Practice.
Get to the point.
It is undoubtedly difficult to control the restless mind, but it's possible by suitable practice and by detachment. By practicing.
Even if we get plagued by the same desires over and over, or same tendencies or whatever.
Well, if you practice, you're going to get better and better at it.
Okay. Thank you. I see
that's like any other practice, Anything you practice, you're going to get better and better and better at it. If the same things are coming up over and over and over again, then you're probably not practicing detachment, you're probably repressing.
I'm sorry, I have to write that down, even though
if you're repressing, not only are the same things going to come back, they're going to come back stronger. Because your current desires are being mixed with all the repressed former desires. Repressing things doesn't make them go away. It just kind of, it's like...
Festers.
They fester. Yes.
Did you have a hand up? No? Okay.
It's kind of like, if you keep shoving food you don't want to eat into your refrigerator is going to get full of rotting food that you don't want to eat.
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah, that's not... If we're plagued by the same desires and the same thoughts and the same feelings over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, we're either repressing now or we haven't dealt with things that we repressed for years in the past. So stuff that if we've been repressing in the past in the name of bhakti, then we're probably going to need to have some, as Prabhupada talks about, techniques of spiritual life. We're probably going to have some techniques to learn how to surface those things and let them go. Like, you might have to clean out your closet or your refrigerator or your drawer, metaphorically speaking.
Yes.
If you've been repressing things for years and years and years and years and years. And then as you practice detachment, once you've cleaned out the old stuff and you're practicing detachment, then you should find that these thoughts, feelings, and desires, that if they recur very briefly. They're they just come and go, and you're hardly even aware of them or concerned with them.
Okay, thank you. Rukmini has a question.
Yeah, so are we saying that the difference between repression and detachment is an attitude?
The difference is an attitude. It's a consciousness, it's an attitude, it's a philosophical bent, it's a different technique, it's a different action, it's a subtle action, but it's still a different action.
Can you broaden that? Because I need it.
I would say it's also a response, right? How you...
Well, detachment is almost a non-response, but there's some sort of response there.
So Urmila Prabhu, even the non-response, like just observing and letting go, that is an action.
That is a kind of action.
Yeah.
One who sees action and inaction and inaction and action. Yeah, it's a kind of action. The best way I can deal with it is metaphorically. Like, let's say you go into a shop that's selling televisions and monitors, and they will put on the screen things that are attractive to show how well their monitors work. And they may be broadcasting, a movie, for example. But you're not watching this movie. And so you're detached. Generally, if you're watching a film, you're going to get pulled into the emotions of the characters.
Yes.
And so as you're walking in this shop, maybe as you walk past the monitor, someone's getting killed, or someone's getting married, or something. But because you haven't made any emotional investment in this film that's on the monitor, you may be aware as you're walking past it that, some figures on the screen are in a wedding or in a battle, but there's nothing that answers it from within. Oh, they're selling monitors.
Yes.
And even if you want to buy a monitor, you're still not going to become emotionally invested in whatever's playing on the screen. You'll be looking at it in terms of, how accurate is the color and what's the resolution and things like that. Whereas if you were actually to watch the movie, another example would be a car accident. So if you're driving down the road and there's a car accident and it's no one you know is in the accident, you're aware that there's a car accident, but there's no response from you. There's no emotional response. The response comes due to attachment. If I drive past the car accident and it's my mother lying on the side of the road, or my friend lying on the side of the road. So what's the difference? The difference is in my feeling of identification and my feeling of attachment. So it's a question of practicing that these have nothing to do with me.
So if I take that metaphor and say I'm the one who can't stop looking at that screen and it's a tendency, then suddenly I need to now practice how not to feel that way. It's so that jump, what is the practice for me to get to the point where, okay, I just see the screen and I'm not involved in the emotion?
I see the emotions and the thoughts that back them up as Krishna's energy, as Krishna says in the 1422. This is just the action of the modes of nature. I'm the observer of the thoughts. The mind is not me. The thoughts and the feelings and desires that go through the mind are not me. And there's a thought. There's a feeling. There's a desire. As you practice more and more, you'll hardly notice them at all. In the beginning, it may have to be, there's a thought, there's a feeling. Is that absolutely a true thought? Are my thoughts the absolute truth? That person doesn't like me. That person probably doesn't like me. Is that absolutely true? Do I know it's true? Do I need to base my life around that?
But that kind of thing, where people think, this person doesn't like me, or that person, that kind of thing stays with, people.
Well, it only stays with you if you're feeding it.
do you not think it's dependent on, like in that particular example, insecurity, personal insecurity?
So therefore you have a spiritual practice alongside detachment of attachment to Krishna. So your spiritual practice includes these two rails of detachment from Maya and attachment to Krishna.
Yeah.
That I don't know if it's true or not what other people think of me. I have no idea what other people think of me. And even if they say to me, I hate you, you know, I mean, people say things that whatever. And ultimately, Krishna loves me. And my security and my safety is in the fact that Krishna loves me. And if I do get really affected, you know, if my whole body goes into a state of fear, then I can observe that and go, oh wow, you know, I still have so many attachments to thinking that I have to have people like me in this world in order to feel secure. I'm not yet on a spiritual platform. How interesting is that? Somehow to step back and find it, just have a sense of curiosity. As an initial practice is just have a sense of curiosity. Oh, that's interesting. And even if the body goes through a strong emotion, oh, look at that's interesting.
There's something very light about what you're saying. It's making me feel lighter.
And then turn to Krishna. I mean, an advanced practice, I say it's advanced because it's only available to people who really know Shastra, who really study Shastra, is that whatever thoughts, feelings, and desires enter into us materially, we find an equivalent thought, feeling, and desire from devotees, not from demons in the scripture, from devotees or from Krishna, and start meditating on that, not just philosophically, but emotionally.
Example?
Yeah, sure. So I know a devotee who, during COVID, was separated from her husband geographically. They were stuck in different parts of the world. And it was months before they could get together again. It was quite a long time. And she was feeling this intense separation from her husband. And it was really interfering with her life. So we started meditating on Rohini and Vasudeva. So Rohini was separate from Vasudeva all those years in Vrindavan. And here she's raising their mutual child. She's raising Balaram alone. Basically, she's there as a single mother. And, you know, Vasudeva wanted to keep Balaram protected. I mean, everyone knew that Balaram was Vasudeva's son. But still, he was trying to protect him from Kamsa. So Vasudeva didn't go to Vrindavan to visit him, nor did Rohini. I mean, maybe Rohini snuck off to Mathura sometimes to visit her husband. I have no idea. But she couldn't bring Balaram with her. And, you know, generally the parents enjoy the child's raising together, but she wasn't able to do that. So how did Rohini feel? How did she feel all of those years? Being separated from her husband, watching their child grow, and then she's got God as her child, and watching her wonderful, amazing child grow, and never being able to share them with her husband. Maybe she wrote a letter to him sometimes, maybe she snuck off to visit him sometimes, but she really was, and this intense separation that she felt. And as we went deeper and deeper and deeper into that, then this devotee's feelings of agony materially abated, because the spiritual feeling is actually rasa. The material feeling is an imitation of rasa. It's not real rasa. It's like artificial food. Yes, you have artificial food here. So it's like, I'm sure you do.
Yes.
So it's like artificial food that doesn't, 0-calorie food. That means it has no value.
Yeah.
Right? It has absolutely no value. So no calories, nothing natural, it's just a bunch of chemicals. It's an imitation. And if you have artificial food on one hand and you have real food on the other hand, so once you experience real rasa, then naturally being detached from the material imitation of rasa becomes very easy. Mm. But one has to do it simultaneously, because if you're diving into the material rasa, you won't be able to take your consciousness to the spiritual. If you're gorging yourself on fake food, there'll be no room in your stomach for prasadam.
Yes.
There won't be any space
Yes.
for it. You've got to separate yourself from the artificial food and indulge in the real food. So both those things. So the impersonalists and the voidists, they're just working on detachment and neutrality. they don't have the positive to go for.
Mhm.
So they tend to try to indulge in sattva guna is what they tend to try to do, and then every once in a while they get overcome by rajas and tamas. But we have the divine to get absorbed. If you think people are speaking badly of you and they hate you, you can meditate on how Vidura felt when Duryodhana threatened him, or how Babishan felt when Ravana threw him out.
So, Urmila Prabhu, we have crossed our time limit. This has just been so interesting and so engaging, and thank you so much for your time.
Oh, well, thank you for asking me.